I'm a brand new Dungeon Master running a homebrew campaign based off a story I'm currently trying to write, hoping that telling the story will motivate me to write the real deal. Luckily, the group I'm running this for are a good group of IRL friends, and are also brand spanking new to Dungeons & Dragons. So I don't have anything particularly horrific, but I figured I'd share a story on the funnier side. Story stuff happens, and the group ends up faced with a building on fire. One member of the party is stuck inside, the barbarian, while the others are outside, confronting the obvious arsonist who started the fire. The cleric, the paladin, and the ranger are the ones doing this. I admit I may have confused the party a bit with the advice one of my DMPCs gave them, where I told them it was best to subdue the culprit in a less violent and flashy manner, otherwise they may draw unwanted attention from law enforcement. But one decision that a player made still truly baffles me. They initially tried to calm the arsonist down by talking to her, which fails dramatically and led to combat. On the paladin's first turn, they decide to try casting Zone of Truth on this woman with a manic expression and a lighter in her hand to ask her if she's the one who started the fire, instead of just subduing her and interrogating her after the combat. Wait.
Alright, lady. You've already killed once, but drop the weapon, and we won't need to hurt you instead. Never. Now you will die. No! Wait! This isn't right! We don't even know if she did it! Dude, she literally just killed that guy! Like, in front of us! And she's holding the weapon!
Yeah, man, I did it.
What? Were you just going to kill her? I'm not gonna, like, kill her immediately. Like, we can subdue her and then ask some questions, like, figure out her side. But, like, she's pointing that gun at you. She's gonna kill you, like, right now. Like, don't you think we should prevent that? Even if she strikes at me, I will not respond. I must show her the way of peace. Should I? Honestly, it might teach him a valuable lesson. Just, yeah. Happens every time.
This leaves me, as well as the barbarian and the cleric players, in awe, as it seems pretty clear that the goal of this combat is to deal with this person as quick as possible, since the barbarians, as well as the other named NPCs' lives were at stake since they're all trapped. The ranger could have even grappled and pinned the arsonist down immediately, since she wasn't even that strong, and yet he, with his lackluster charisma stat, continued to try talking the woman down after she had already attacked him with clear intent to kill. Thankfully, they dealt with her before the entire building went down, but it was incredibly silly how they turned a combat that could have been ended in one turn into 7 turns of failed negotiations and whiffed attacks. My player's been getting better as time goes on, though, and the finale of the campaign is right around the corner. Savor that finale. Experiencing that with your players is a heck of a thing, and I'm glad you get to do that, instead of having your players all burn in the fiery inferno, though depending on your PBG, that might happen anyway. You never know. This one is short and pretty different from your average story, but might be fun to share. I was at a tabletop role-playing game conference the other day, and it was a blast. There were some really cool artists, we painted some minis, and some of the talks were very eye-opening. Anyway, this person, I, was very excited to attend the talk about making more combat interesting, as I am a new Dungeon Master and making combat less samey and more dynamic, and being able to show off each character's abilities and make everyone feel cool is important to me. However, the guy who hosted the talk about combat sounded so awful to play with, it's almost amusing, and I just feel like I should share. He started by detailing his history as military personnel, a bouncer, and historical combat reenactor. Why do I have a feeling only the last one is true? All about how many messed up, violent situations he's been in, and now he plays with a bunch of other people that have been in real combat. D&D combat just doesn't feel realistic. Wonder why. Maybe it's the fireballs and the dragons. How combat design, dynamics, layers, etc., they're all irrelevant. I don't really remember every specific point he made, as this was a bit ago, and I zoned out after hearing him talk a bit, but some of the things I remember him talking about. 1. He was very insistent that people wrote down what he was saying, even though, right out the gate, I can see half the audience losing interest as he just kills his own credibility. 2. He thinks Dex-based armor class doesn't make any sense. I don't remember his reasoning or what he proposed to change it to. Initiative should also be re-rolled every round because how it stands doesn't make any sense. Honestly, my boss fights have phases. Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3, etc. And each time a phase rolls around, my party do re-roll initiative. How do you guys feel about re-rolling initiative during combat? I'm actually kind of curious. Oh, and players should immediately say what they should do, or else they lose their turn, because in real life, you don't get to think about what you're doing next. Because, yeah, we're all wizards with decades of magical training, or trained combatants, and we're not playing make-believe, of course. At the end, he was like, we're running out of time, so let me quickly go over some other points I wrote down, which include things like minion motivations and map design, which were things that were actually interesting.
Now that I've fully summarized my extensive military combat experience, I think I can gloss over all the DnD minions and dynamic combat rules that could help you in your game. You know, those things are like the side stuff that... Isn't that the whole point of the presentation though? Like, you're glossing over the stuff we actually showed up for. Look, do you know who you're talking to? I am a trained Navy SEAL with over 129 kills in Afghanistan. I have slain countless men. I mean, I know I just gave a number, but it's actually countless men, because I can't count.
But at that point, I no longer trusted his judgment, and he barely talked about those points at all because he preferred rambling on about how combat in this make-believe game doesn't look like real combat. Anyway, that felt like a waste of an hour of my life, but at least it was kind of amusing. I do not want to discredit his ability to DM for a table. If his players genuinely do enjoy this, then that's great for them. But I cannot imagine the majority of players want to play like this, and to have a talk at a conference assuming everyone else does just feels weird. At this rate, just play another game, man. I don't even know if you could play another game. Like, what game really realistically simulates combat? Combat is just not something that most people even want to realistically simulate. Because, you know, in combat, real combat, you can die. Some of his points are interesting, but this is something that really frustrates me about a lot of TTRPG and honestly just a lot of entertainment discussions. Some people have a habit of whining a lot, but they don't get to the actual point of what they want out of all this whining. The fact that the actual interesting stuff, the solutions that might make people's combat more efficient and fun, were at the end of the presentation just says a lot about this guy's focus. He wanted to show off his combat expertise and how badass he is, but he didn't care about actually making a fun game. Also, honestly, you know, press X to doubt on most of this guy's claims, because do you have any idea how many people claim crap like this and have no idea what they're talking about? They're endless. So this story begins shortly after I accidentally destroyed the previous campaign, which is an entirely different story. I've wanted to DM for a while now, before what happened, and feel a little guilty about the previous campaign, so I picked up the role of Game Master. All the other players and the previous GM agreed to this, and we're off to Session 0. During the Session 0, we decided to switch from Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition to Pathfinder 2nd Edition, and to use Foundry as our new virtual tabletop. Yes! Welcome to the right side of history. I'm kidding. All VTTs are equal. It's just that we at Crispy's Tavern, we like having favorite kids. Anyway, due to me being in a tight spot at the moment, one of my players buys Foundry and offers to host while giving me the administrator profile. And with that, I'm off to prep for the first session for my 6-player campaign. What could go wrong? I spent a couple weeks learning what my players intend to do with their characters, and I find ways to write them into the story as the main heroes. Some of them had already talked to me about this over the past few years, and they were already well integrated into the world I prepared. One of those players was also the one hosting the VTT. After learning what I thought were the essentials of game mastering Pathfinder 2nd Edition and investing a bit into Foundry, I then got a message from the player hosting the server that he's dropping out due to life issues he needs to take care of. So with a week left, I have to buy Foundry myself, rebuild what was done, rebalance what I had planned, and write out his character. By the way, this is a serious pro tip for any Foundry user. You can easily save and port worlds over by downloading the files on your computer, or if you're hosting, it's as easy as hitting the clone world button. The community is awesome on helping people through this. Just join the Discord, ask around for it, or there are plenty of instructions on their website. Seriously, do this. Don't lose all your stuff. Session day arrives, and with about 30 minutes till the session starts, I get a message that a player can't make it. If it wasn't obvious by now, I'm brand new to being a game master, so I'm a bit panicked. And I already rebalanced the encounter for 4 players, only for another player to not show up last minute. I want to call off the session at this point. I planned for 6 people. I have half that now, and I'm lacking the experience to adapt to this on the fly. But the former game master encourages me to continue anyway and see what happens. Well, I was nowhere near as prepared as I thought. The whole thing was a slog of bad dice rolls and checking rules. By some miracle, none of my players died, but our morale is pretty low, and we called it there for the night. I'm currently studying the rules I missed and planning for next time, but hells was that a disheartening experience. It would be a lie if I said I wasn't tempted to call it the campaign after that. But I'm still gonna give it at least one more go. Mild horror stories like this are important because, yeah, we're all gonna run into this, especially us new Dungeon Masters. Sometimes you're just not gonna know the rules. But in terms of problems for you to have, I think this isn't a bad one. You can internalize the rules of Pathfinder. You can take out a book and study up. This is much better than having a group of players that simply don't get along, because there's nothing really you can do about that. But this, you can learn, especially since you have another Game Master in your corner. Give this another go, man. I promise. I think that you have the recipe for success. Just learn those rules, give it another shot, and I think you're going to surprise yourself. Hey Crispy, I'm a big fan of the channel. Thank you, by the way. I've binged all of your D&D horror videos while at work, and I thought to share my own. Though this isn't just one large incident, it's more of a lot of smaller ones over my lifetime of playing D&D. Sorry if things jump around or are hazy. I'm typing this as I have time, and I have a tendency to ramble and explain way too much. My history with D&D started with 4th edition. Cue the gasps and screams of horror. One faithful Thanksgiving day while I was in middle school, my extended family all got together to hang out, eat delicious food, and play games together. My dad, his brothers, and his sister had started a small campaign where they would play whenever they could get together. They had included a couple of my older cousins as well, which prompted me to want to get involved. I got to making my character on the computer, and I was guided to make a human paladin for ease of roleplay and playing the game as well. Oh, and as a bonus, my uncle that DM'd gave me the option of either a Pegasus or a unicorn for a mount/companion. Gotta love your standard level 1 kit. You know, basic iron swords, some scrappy tin armor. Oh, and a freaking unicorn! Yeah, I was unaware of the brokenness that is flying. I picked the unicorn for an intelligent mount to talk to and to get advice from, and the Dungeon Master ruled they would tell me things that my patron deity wanted to communicate with me. I had a blast with that one, possibly for 2 sessions. Even if I was shy or anxious about things going wrong, the whole idea of using your imagination to play a game was exciting and enticing. But it wasn't until years later that I could play a game again and get first-hand experience as to the problems that plague many a D&D game. Alright, sophomore year of high school, I had a friend we'll call Host. Host and I didn't share any classes, but we typically shared a seat on the bus due to our stops being right next to each other. He brought up tabletop games and how his friends were interested, and I expressed having played D&D and being interested as well. So we all scheduled a Friday to meet up and all go to his house to get the game set up. I eventually became the designated chauffeur as I was the only one with a license. I took my dad's van whenever we had a session planned. Out of all the people playing with us, I only remember 4. The Dungeon Master, the host, someone we'll call Kara. Is that the bad guy? And another person we'll call Tina. We were using a shed that Host had converted into his man cave as our base for playing. And while I had mentioned D&D, we actually used Pathfinder 1st Edition, as the other players were either more familiar or just wanted to play that instead. Being unfamiliar with Pathfinder and its differences, I read over the races and found myself attached to gnomes. The way they were described made me think they could have all manner of hair color and skin color. So I played a female gnome cleric, since we needed a healer that was willing to play support with yellow hair and blue skin. I played her as a bubbly extrovert to try and get me, an introvert, to roleplay more. Host had made a male drow ranger, and we agreed that they had a shared backstory that I didn't remember the details of. I don't remember any other characters, but the horror came not from the game, but from outside drama. Kara seemed like a really sweet person, but I never got close to her. Her and Tina seemed like close friends, though since Tina always backed her up on things before I had met them, Kara had apparently been ran over by a car? Oh my god! I feel so bad for speculating she's the bad guy in the story. My bad, dude, my bad. she was suffering some PTSD involving fast-moving objects and crossing sidewalks. This was explicitly brought up to everyone at the table, and I was completely empathetic and on board with helping her to be comfortable. But unfortunately, the other players didn't seem to care much. Teens being teens, a few people ended up tossing things to and from each other across the table, and even after Kara and Tina's protest, they didn't stop until she had a full-blown panic episode. I wish I had done something here. I can't recall if I was part of the quiet protest for things being thrown around, or if that was just me yelling in my own head, but I just really sat there, uncomfortably. Tina was hugging Kara and helping to calm her down, and I just watched. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know her that well. Would hugging her as a complete stranger make it worse? For me, yes, absolutely. Don't do that without permission. Anyway, my mind raced with what ifs, while my body just sat. Later on, maybe a week after, something happened with Host and his girlfriend. That may have been Kara at the time, but I don't remember. And it completely destroyed the group. I felt pressured into siding with the girls against him, but I tried to keep him away diplomatically as opposed to being aggressive. Without Host, though, we ended up moving our games to the Dungeon Master's house. The DM played Host's character leaving group as him betraying us to bandits, to match how he had betrayed his girlfriend. Dude, okay, I don't know about y'all, but I need some elaboration on that, because when you say he betrayed his girlfriend, it could be like, oh, he cheated, or he sold her family out to a rival family in the mafia, and now the two of them are gonna be at war on opposite sides. You know, my mind, it goes weird places, okay? Anyway, my character was utterly devastated. The game dissolved shortly after as summer break rolled around, and no one ever talked about bringing it back come fall. Junior year rolls around, I go into a sort of running start program. Essentially, I am shuttled from the high school into a tech school for the first half of my classes, and then I'm shuttled right back to the high school for the latter half. I was taking a video game programming class, and I had a lot of fun coding, animating, and meeting other tech nerds. And some of them played D&D. Some of them.
Corporate needs you to find the differences between this picture and this picture. They're the same picture.
So after shyly showing my interest in tabletop games, I was invited to join an online game of theirs, and I was so excited to play again, and in a new medium that I was more used to. I rolled up a half-orcish druid who was unsure of her abilities and strength, having been kicked out of her orcish clan for being seen as weak, and then raised by a kind druid hermit. We were all having lots of fun. I rolled really high to bonk a goblin over the head with my quarterstaff, and surprised myself when I killed it. Our bard was either an awakened honey badger or someone that was polymorphed into a honey badger, and we just goofed around and had a great time. So where's the horror in this? Well, once again, the horror lay not in the game itself, but outside factors. The virtual tabletop we were using had an update or a glitch, and all of our character sheets had been deleted. Everything was wiped, and this is why you use pen and paper character sheets, man! I mean, you could lose those, but like, okay, yeah, never mind. Everything was wiped, apparently with no backups. Devastated, we moved to a different virtual tabletop and started a brand new game, this time a Pathfinder 1st edition game. I played a Dragonborn Ranger, but we didn't get far into it before it fizzled out during summer break and never got back together. After I graduated, my younger siblings all expressed a desire to try tabletop gaming, so I offered to create a D&D 5th edition game and try my hand at DMing for them, as I was the most experienced with the game. We'll call them Sheep, Bunny, and Lion. Sheep was in high school at the time, Bunny and Lion both in middle school. Lion was the most excited to play, and he was the one that brought it up again and again. Bunny was intrigued by the idea, much like I was, and she was willing to try it. She was interested, but not as much as everyone else. We'll get to her later. I wrote up a short campaign idea about a dragon cult that was trying to resurrect a green Draco Lich and had a silver dragon family affected by their shenanigans. The party consisted of Sheeps, half-elven cleric of Soluna. Soluna or Suna? Oh, Sune something. Okay, well, that's a new one for me. Bunny's half-elven bard, and Lion's dragonborn monk. Their first quest was a basic one to ease them into combat. Bandits had taken control of a sparse resource, and they were tasked with clearing them out. Bunny was a bit timid in her approach to combat initially, and didn't like lethally killing enemies, so I allowed her to knock out a bandit and tie him up for questioning. This led to her gaining an attachment to this random bandit, and she let him go. This continued into their base, where they cleared them out and captured the group leader, a Kenku. They then let him go as well. I was going going to give them a consequence for this, since these guys are the branch of a much larger bandit group, but decided against it, so the two bands became reformed and just never showed up again.
Good sir, we hope you continue down this path of righteousness and accept love into your heart.
Yep, thanks, path of righteousness.
Hey, who are you exactly? You're interrupting my work. I was about to stab those idiots in the back.
Oh, I'm no one. I'm just the dungeon master.
Dungeon master? What was that a kink thing? Go back to mastering your dungeon then, alright? I got stuff to do.
Yeah, sorry, I do have to do something. I'm gonna make you a good person.
Make me a what now?
I mean, I created you, and I also am you in a way, so I guess I can make you whatever I want.
What?
Yeah, it's very existential. Just stand still.
Huh. I feel a lot nicer now.
Yeah, you're welcome. Initially, Bunny's playstyle baffled me. This is CoMbaT. Monsters are to be slain. But really, this was a great lesson for the both of us. Monsters can still be people and act in a more human way. This led me to think a bit more about who they were fighting and why they were fighting. Rabbit played very simply and I was okay with that. She was new after all. Lion approached combat like I expected him to. Smack and punch until dead, which led to a small problem later on. To allow time for a plot, I led the party to a nearby town where there was a festival of the gods happening the next day. This was partly so I could familiarize myself and the party with the local deities, and also to serve as a backdrop for a murder mystery plotline. I crafted carnival-themed attractions for every single non-race specific god of the Forgotten Realms. The good aligned gods had things happen in the morning, neutral aligned gods were in the afternoon, and evil were in the evening. I played the evil stuff as more appeasing the gods rather than actual worship, such as mock executions for Baal, or ceremonies to the sea for Umberly.
Oh Lord Baal, master of murder, god of blood, we offer you this sacrifice of a clearly real being. That's not a toy, definitely not, no. And we are going to spill this clearly very real blood that's not just ketchup. And then you will be satisfied and appeased. Prepare the sacrifices.
Yeah, seems legit. I gave everyone a time frame to do the activities they wanted to do, and had them make rolls for everything that was important. Lion went to the section for God, a god of crafting, and insisted on making some knuckle dusters for harder punches. I allowed it with a roll, and he did really well, so I gave him +1 to his unarmed strikes. Bunny went to watch a matchmaking event for Suni, whatever, sort of like those dating shows, but on stage. And as for Sheep, well, Sheep had been very disinterested in the game after the first couple of sessions. She said she was having fun, but her actions said a completely different story. She would constantly get up and start cooking cookies in the kitchen, barely coming back during roleplay. I felt like she just didn't care much for the game, and I confronted her about it. I said she could leave at any time if she wasn't having fun, but she insisted that she was fine, so I left it alone. I don't think she did anything in the festival. But because Sheep was so distant in her contributions, and because we only had 3 players, I thought that I needed to step in and help the party balance a bit, so I created a DMPC. Cue Thunder and Lightning. DMPCs can be good, fight me! They aren't part of the horror, I swear! I know, I believe you. This tiefling druid was introduced during the Suni dating show. Bunny's character was called up to the stage, and for her date, the showrunner looked off to the side at a figure that was trying his best to hide and not be seen. He was picked and practically forced onto the stage by the crowd, causing him to stumble and show off his demonic features. I had the crowd heckle him and played him very uncomfortable and embarrassed. Bunny acted exactly as I expected, and politely helped him off stage, expressing that even if the crowd said they were supposed to go on a blind date, she would not enforce it if he didn't want to. Extremely thankful, but still feeling that he should honor the will of Suna's cleric, he agreed to just hang out platonically for the day. Bunny and I are actually asexual, but we didn't know this at the time. I made him a healer, and he only talked about the plot at hand when prompted. I really did my damnedest not to overshadow anyone, but if they wanted to delve into his backstory, I would have let them. After the day of the festival, the murder mystery started. I did a werewolf-style mystery with the murderer not even knowing they had committed the crime until they realized what they became. I also threw in a red herring were-shark pirate for fun. Since they were level 2, I didn't have the werewolf confront them directly in a fight, but instead they would do a ritual to purify the werewolf curse from the host and have them fight a weakened wolf spirit. But something happened I didn't expect. While I was describing the crime scene and the poor victim for the benefit of the party investigation, Sheep suddenly got up from the table and left the room. I paused the session, feeling that something wasn't right. I got up and talked to her about it, and she said she was getting scared of how I was describing the scene. Well, I'll admit, I was getting detailed about the mauling. I didn't realize it was too much. I accidentally set up a real horror vibe. After that, Sheep officially dropped out of the campaign, and I had her character bow out of helping due to fright, and she just went back to Suni's temple. From then on, I had the party discover the Silver Dragon family in the monk village, and they learned of the Green Draco Lich cult. They had poisoned the father dragon to a critical state, and had stolen his egg. So the party tracked the cult leader down to their hideout, and that was it. No, really. Unfortunately, I got burnt out on planning sessions, and I was getting overly anxious at the thought of running it again. I just couldn't bring myself to plan another session. Lion pestered me for weeks and weeks after the last game, asking when it would happen again, and I realized that part of my anxiety was because of him. It was partly because he was my younger brother, and he's just not mature at the time. He would always ask for more, trying to buff his character like a video game, and was a bit of a spotlight hog if I recall correctly. I just grew to hate having to TM for him.
When we playing D&D? What? Dude, this is like one of the most emotional plots I've ever seen in my life, and you're interrupting it for the... Come on, give me a couple minutes, man. Okay. Just like, let me know.
12 seconds later.
When are we playing D&D? Dude, I was trying to enjoy my comic book. I mean, come on. I don't get many breaks these days, alright? Work's been really stressful. Just, please.
2 seconds later.
Oh my god, boss is calling me into work again. Whoa! So why aren't we playing D&D right now? Dude, you know things have been really busy with the Mafia War lately. I barely have any time to myself these days, okay? I need time to relax too. It's just, right now, I'm getting kind of burnt out with everything going on. Just give me a little bit of a break. I'll be back when I'm ready, okay? You know, I understand you're really, really busy and like work's been killing you and you barely had time to relax, but I think you should be able to prep like 2 or 3 hours for a game and then run the game for it. I mean, you know, you're just a dispenser for entertainment, let's be honest.
I can't blame him solely for ruining the game, as it definitely wasn't just his fault. I wasn't dealing with him as I should have, but it just burned away my enjoyment and led me to be anxious about running another game, so I never picked it back up with them. A year or so later, Lion tried to DM his own game for us, but we only ever did play one session. I wonder if he had the same problem I did. Several years later, a bit after 2020, some coworkers of mine were talking about starting a D&D game. I threw in that I'd be interested, and we formed a group. We'll call that guy Dan, and we rolled up characters to play Lost Mines of Fendelver. I made a Dragonborn Fey Warlock who was raised in the Fey since he was born, to make him quirky and fun. But again, the horror that lurked resided not in the game. This time, it was a combination of Dan and a new co-worker we invited a few sessions in. We'll call her Jane. Jane played a rogue, and she was definitely all about stealing from the party, but she didn't stick around long enough for that to be the problem. No, what happened was, Dan apparently had an attraction to Jane, and tried to hook up with her after a session. I was under the impression that they had also just been going out to get drinks together as friends. I didn't hear much if Jane was also under this impression, but from what I heard, the date went bad enough that she dropped the campaign immediately. However, luckily, another player in the group volunteered to take over DMing for the rest of us. He retired his character to help out Fandelvin, and the rest of the party moved on. There was a very close call with a new player after that, you know, where his character nearly attacked someone's new character as they were being introduced, but the way this guy was in general outside the game just gave me bad vibes I couldn't describe. But he left when he was fired from the company, for reasons I've never asked about. Nowadays, I'm still playing with this group, but I'm DMing my own session too. Everyone's having a good time, and I'm not stressed over DMing as I've prepared much more in advance. Bunny even started to DM her own game online, and I've joined her group as well. I'm glad things seem to finally settle down. I can still keep one eye open for any horrors that might decide to sneak back into my life again. God, talk about countless problems, from not caring about someone's sugars to just general family crap. I hope Bunny has an incredible game. She sounds like an angel of a player. I'm sure she'll make a great dungeon master as well. Look, sometimes games don't work out, especially when you're shooting your shot with random groups and people you don't know. Even with family, it might not work out. Sometimes the game is the game, and sometimes it's not easy to find that group. It's not like dating. You gotta look around and find what's right for you. But hey, after all this, these people did find their game. They either started one themselves or they joined a group they loved. Trust me, your game's out there somewhere. You just gotta find it. Hey, That's a wrap. If you guys enjoyed this video, then you might enjoy our other video on someone who thought they were really badass. A Reddit white knight in this case. It's linked in the cards. A very fun one. But before you go, please do leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it. Also, if you want to get notified right as we upload, you can subscribe to Crispy Tavern and hit that bell icon. And finally, if you want to leave your own stories or thoughts, you could go down into the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment CoMbaT experience to let me know you made it to the end of the video. Hey, by the way, if you have your own horror stories, you can send them directly to us. There's an email down in the description down below. Send your stories our way for a chance to be featured in one of these videos. But hey, even if you don't have any stories, in essence, like, comment, subscribe. I will see you all next time. Farewell.
What are we playing, D&D?